At 3 p.m. on Sunday, July 2nd, 2023, in the bustling heart of Sapporo, on Japan's northernmost island, a hotel employee made a disturbing discovery. On the floor of the bathroom was the body of a deceased man, but that wasn't what left the employee with nightmares. It was what they didn't see that distressed them the most. The victim's body was missing its head. Adding to the strangeness of the scene was the fact the room was located inside a love hotel. These accommodations are common in Japan and are designed for lovers to carry out secret liaisons or for couples to have some privacy while they bring their fantasies to life, which left investigators to question if the murder was a Tinder hookup gone horrifically wrong, or if the decapitation indicated the victim had been specifically targeted. What they discovered proved both things can be true at the same time. Hitoshi Ura was 62 years old when he met his gruesome end. During the day, he worked in an administration office to support his wife and kids at home. From the outside looking in, he appeared to be a typical Japanese husband and father. But when the sun went down, Hitoshi was an entirely different person. Ever since he was a teenage boy, Hitoshi had enjoyed crafting cute little anime figurines. By the time he was a young adult, this had morphed into sewing costumes of the same characters. The hobby continued after he got married and had children, and eventually he began to wear the outfits when his wife and kids weren't home. Then one day, his wife came home early and caught him dressed up in one of his costumes, including makeup, a wig, and high heels. The incident could have ended their marriage, but his wife agreed he could continue with his secret hobby so long as he only did it away from their home. Hitoshi began to wear his costumes out in public in the red light district of Susukino. What was unique about Hitoshi's particular style of dressing up was that all of his outfits made him appear like a woman, but not just visually. He also changed his voice, hunched over so he appeared smaller, and wore expensive wigs which were almost impossible to differentiate from real hair. He did everything he could to make sure no one could see that he was pretending to be a woman. In fact, Hitoshi was so far into his alternate feminine personality that he introduced himself as a woman and told people he was a lesbian. It's important to note, cross-dressing for Hiroshi wasn't about his sexual identity. He didn't identify as trans, and he was still interested in women. There was just one reason Hitoshi dressed up in the way he did. He knew that as a 62-year-old man with a wife and kids, he wasn't going to be desirable to the type of young woman he wanted to be with. Presenting as a woman gave him easy access to the girls he wanted to use to bring his dark fantasies to life. It didn't take long for Hitoshi to develop a reputation in the district for being sexually promiscuous after he was seen entering love hotels with multiple different women on the same night. All of that might not have seemed like such a problem until Hitoshi was caught watching women at public bathhouses as they bathed in the nude. By the mid-2000s, his predatory behavior towards women had escalated significantly, and he was banned from several of his regular clubs in the red light district. Maybe, if Runa Tamura had known this about Hitoshi, she would never have given him a second glance. Runa had a difficult childhood growing up in rural Japan. She was bullied relentlessly as a child and dropped out of several schools due to an unnamed chronic illness. She struggled to make friends and was always known as a quiet and shy girl who would rather keep to herself. Her isolation became so bad that she would lash out at classmates when they spoke to her. Eventually, she was required to undergo psychiatric treatment and go on medication to balance her moods. From a very young age, Runa told her parents Hiroko and Osamu that she hated men. Over time, they came to accept she would end up in a relationship with a woman. She spent hours chatting to women online and eventually built up the courage to put up her profile on a dating site. It didn't take long for Runa to get a message from a beautiful young woman with the name Tomochin. Runa opened up to the stranger and told her all about her fear of men and how she had always felt different to other women. Tomochin said all the right things, and eventually they made a plan to meet up in person at a club in Susukino. She could never have imagined how her life would change because of that simple decision. See, Tomochin was none other than Hitoshi, and he only had one thing on his mind. Hitoshi and Runa met in person for the first time at a club event in May 2023. In CCTV footage filmed at the event, Hitoshi and Runa can be seen dancing alone in the middle of the club while lights and music pulse around them. They are both smiling, and at times, Runa pulls Hitoshi in towards her so their faces are very close, almost like an intimate moment between a couple. It's clear that sparks were already flying between the two, even though they had only just met. Runa was excited at the prospect of a relationship. She was 29 years old and still naive to the dangers of the world. In fact, on the day she danced with Hitoshi, she had taken her father with her to the club to make sure that she was going to be safe. He can be seen in the background of the CCTV footage, keeping a close eye on his precious daughter as she enjoyed herself on the dance floor. Once the event was over, Hitoshi and Runa kept in touch and arranged to meet up again. Over the next few weeks, they chatted online and went on a couple of dates. After dinner one night, Hitoshi invited Runa to come back to his hotel room to see where the night took them. But when the door was shut behind them, Runa made a terrifying discovery. The person she was alone with wasn't a woman at all, and she had been deceived in the worst way. Runa immediately tried to get away from Hitoshi, but he easily overpowered her and blocked the doorway. It was clear to Runa she had been tricked. Hitoshi wasn't a woman who was falling in love with her. He was a man who had used her insecurities to gain her trust. All so he could take advantage of her in the most unspeakable way. With no way to escape, Runa was raped by the person she had once envisioned a future with. Eventually, Runa was able to get away from Hitoshi, and she returned home and told her parents what had happened. But rather than ring the police and report the sexual assault, Osamu decided to take matters into his own hands. He tracked Hitoshi down and threatened that if he ever came near his daughter again, he would go to authorities and tell them about the sexual assault. Surprisingly, Hitoshi apologized, and he promised Osamu that he would leave Runa alone. But his promise was short-lived. Just a few weeks later, Hitoshi messaged Runa online and asked her to meet up with him again. Runa told her parents what was going on, and together they came up with a plan to keep her safe once and for all. The added bonus of their plan was ridding the world of a sexual predator. Runa messaged Hitoshi online and agreed to meet up with him. In the late evening of the 1st of July 2023, they checked into a love hotel. But there was no love in the air this time. The pair got into the shower together, and as Runa embraced Hitoshi from behind, she grabbed the knife she was hiding behind her back and began to viciously stab him all over his back and neck. Her attack was so frenzied, Hitoshi never had a chance to fight back. He bled out right there on the floor of the shower. If Runa had just wanted Hitoshi dead, she could easily have stopped there. But her hurt ran far deeper. Hitoshi had tricked her, violated her, and humiliated her. She wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine, so Runa took a saw and a knife from her suitcase and proceeded to remove Hitoshi's head from his torso. She then took all of his belongings, including his head, and put it into her suitcase. At around 2 a.m., she walked out of the hotel wearing an all-black outfit, a blonde wig, and a fedora hat. She told the front desk staff that she was leaving alone and stepped onto the pavement where her father was waiting to pick her up and take her home. Once they arrived, Runa handed her mom Hiroko Hitoshi's head, which she put inside the freezer. Runa's behavior after returning home gives some insight into her state of mind at the time of the murder. She changed her clothes, borrowed her dad's car, and drove into the red light district to go clubbing. The next day, Osamu went back to work as a psychiatrist and carried on as if nothing had happened. But his wife wasn't so relaxed about the situation. She rang a family member and confessed that even though they had given Runa a knife and plotted to kill Hitoshi, they didn't think Runa would actually go through with it. The following day, staff at the Love Hotel entered the room after noticing that the guests from the night before hadn't checked out. They were horrified to discover the naked, bloody, and decapitated body in the shower and immediately called the police. Officials took a couple of weeks to identify Runa and track her down, but that was only after 240 officers were called in to help with the search. When they reviewed the CCTV footage from the Love Hotel, they noticed her walking in with Hitoshi the night before dressed in a light-colored outfit. She was then seen leaving in the early hours of the morning, wearing dark-colored clothing, a wig, and a hat, which they realized was intended to conceal her identity. On the 25th of July, Runa was arrested at her family home. Officials found what was left of Hitoshi's head inside the freezer. This led officials to arrest Osamu and Hiroko as accomplices. Officers also found several knives and saws believed to have been used during the murder, as well as footage of Runa handling Hitoshi's head. During one of her police interviews, Runa stated, "I have several different personalities in me. This was done by only one of them." She also admitted she had been collecting knives since childhood, but her father had purchased the one she decapitated Hitoshi with, as well as the suitcase she used to transport his head. At the time of this recording, Runa has not been sentenced for the murder. Japanese media were gripped by this case mostly because Japan's murder rate is one of the lowest in the world. The case also triggered conversations about the deeper societal issues, which many believe contributed to Runa's actions. Many online commentators expressed a degree of sympathy for Runa because of her past experiences with Hitoshi and the ways in which he exploited and manipulated her. This highlighted a troubling aspect of the Japanese criminal justice system, where victims of sexual assault often face significant barriers to reporting these crimes. The reluctance to come forward is fueled by dismissive attitudes from authorities towards sexual violence and a pervasive culture of shame that stigmatizes victims rather than supporting them. But does all of that really justify murder and decapitation?